Ladies and gentlemen, I have here with me Project Lean Nation Frisco's owner, Micheal Smith. Today, we'll discuss many of the lessons that you have to offer the world. Let's get started. When did the idea of owning your own business by having a Project Lean Nation franchise first come to you?
Well, first, Ion, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm excited to share some of the things that I've learned. So it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be a good time. Really that idea, um, the specific idea came about 4 years ago. And it's interesting, the idea came in a time of really hardship in our business that had changed. And so we lost a large portion of our income. But I was able to see Project Lean Nation in Rochester, New York. And that's when I saw it and was like, oh my gosh, this would be really cool to own one of these one day. And so for me, I've been in health and wellness though for 25 years. But the Project Lean Nation idea really, again, came out of what a lot of people would have thought was, tragic as far as business wise. But here we are now in this beautiful store. Incredible community. You're here because of it. And so many things that people, you don't realize in life what happens whenever you have something that's bad. If you look at the positive, so many good things will happen. So for me, it came in a moment of transition, but transition led to something pretty amazing here.
For sure.
Yeah.
From getting the phone call confirming that you were able to have your first Project Lean Nation
Mm-hmm.
store, what were the steps you took to make it a reality?
Right. Yeah, so for me, whenever I saw Project Lean Nation in 2019, I actually couldn't do anything with it because as a company, they really were not equipped to get the product to me to be able to even have this store. And so for me, it was a matter of being persistent. I called my buddy who actually owned one in Charlotte, North Carolina, and said, "Hey, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet?" And they never were until March the 22nd of 2000, and I guess that was 22 whenever I called him and says, "Hey, I think we're ready." And so 2 years. And so there's a good lesson for so many people, especially young people. It's about, persevering through things and just continuing to call, continuing to follow up. And then here we are now. We're able to do it. And the steps are real simple. On Wednesday, my buddy Jeremy said, "Yeah, I think you can do it." He said, "Call Tim, the founder of Project Lean Nation." Called him on a Wednesday afternoon. He said, "Thursday, the very next day, we have a discovery day here. So if you want to come, I'd encourage you to come. We're tomorrow." So, like less than 12 hours, I was on the plane heading to Rochester, New York.
Wow.
And so that's how, but again, that's one of those things that we've been thinking about it for a while. The decision was already made. It's just about when there was the timing right for them. And once it was, I was ready. And that's how opportunity happens, right? And so that really is kind of what happened in the process. And so, of course, after that, it's just the semantics of it. Okay, well, what did you do? Well, I found a location, which took a while. Got a real estate agent. So I did all the things necessary to get you to this place. Found a contractor. Realized the contractors were crazy expensive in Frisco, Texas. And so I actually did the contracting myself with a buddy of mine who has a lot more experience, and I was just kind of around to help him out as well. So it's been quite an interesting journey, though, for sure.
4 years in the making.
Yeah, 4 years, but some people wait a lifetime to realize a dream. So 4 years is a small time for sure.
So what you talked about, from finding a space to building it to
Hmm.
hiring employees to building a connection with the community, everything I've seen us do so far at Project Lean Nation has been so inspiring.
Hmm.
There's so much I've learned as someone who wants to have my own business one day.
Hmm.
What are some of the lessons you learned in starting Project Lean Nation?
Right, right. Well, some of the lessons I learned in Project Lean Nations are lessons of life, really. And so, number one is just showing up. That's what I've learned in life with most people. They just don't show up. And so you've got to show up in order to achieve anything. And so showing up, being consistent, being persistent. One of the things, I say this to people all the time, not taking no as an answer, but sometimes no is the right answer, understanding when no is the right answer, but when you really need to start looking deeper into something. But for me, It's always been just about consistency, hard work. Hard work is something that you're going to have to do if you want to own something. I will tell you there's not a lot of balance when you first get started. I mean, it owns you pretty much, and so the key is getting yourself around the right people and bringing the right people around to where you can start relinquishing some and delegating some things, because that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with is they're like going, well, I do it best. And so I'm going to continue to do it. Well, if you do that, you're always going to have a job. You're always going to be tied to something. And so my goal in starting any business is, how do I get myself out of the business, but still be successful? And that really is what the goal is right now. But right now we're in the trenches. We're in the, we've got to do things that I don't necessarily want to do. And that's another thing I would, you asked, in order to be successful for people that want to start a business, sometimes you got to do things that you don't want to do. I hate admin. I do not want to do admin stuff. I do not want to do inventory, but I don't have a choice. I've got to learn that because that's a part of my business. I have to learn every part of it. I can't just say I only want to do the fun parts. I mean, how would that go in life if you only did the fun parts of life?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be much of a life because you wouldn't be able to do much of anything.
Yeah.
So
you kind of touched on this in your answer,
Mhm.
but as a business owner, you must be dedicated to your craft. I remember you telling me you stayed till 12 a.m. and got back to the store at 6 a.m. the day after a lot of time this past month.
Yeah.
That is a sacrifice business owners have to make to be able to see their dreams come into a reality.
Mhm.
How important is it to be that dedicated to what you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't really have a choice. I mean, the options are success or failure. And so someone who's going to be successful at something is going to do whatever it takes. And that's a kind of a short, funny story. Whenever I've always been self-employed since I was 17. I bought my first rental property when I was 17 years old. I started a company when I was 18, 19 years old. And so I've always been an entrepreneur. And so, but it's funny. My wife and I got married. We had a couple of kids, and she's like, you know what? All the businesses you do are like seasonal. Sometimes it's feast or famine. Sometimes it's really good months, and sometimes it's not. And so she's like, you need to get a real job. And so I'm 28 years old, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'll get a real job. And so I went and interviewed at one of the big three insurance companies. And basically I was able to get a job without any college education because I had lots of skills. And so they wanted me. And so I remember my first day on the job, sitting there going, what have I done? I was like, I was like sitting there and, I had to come in at a certain time and leave at a certain time. That was the mentality of a worker, but I was self-employed. I was an entrepreneur. So guess what? I got there early and I stayed late as I watched people come in at 9 o'clock, 9:30. And I remember asking my boss, I'm like, well, how do I get on their shift? And she goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, how do they come in at, what's the 9:30 shift? And she goes, oh, they're just late every day. I'm like, are you serious? You can just be late every day and it's not, and they still get paid the same salary? This doesn't work for me. But I brought a different mindset. And so business owners bring a different mindset to the table. Entrepreneurs bring a different mindset to the table. And it's when's the job done? When the job is done. It's not at 5. It's not at 6. It's not at 7. It's when it's done. And, you have to be diligent with that. You have to be consistent with that and disciplined. And I'm not disciplined in every area of my life. But, I've obviously got work to do. I know Ion works with us here at Project Lean Nation. I've been joking today about how I'm perfect. Of course, I'm not perfect, but I mean, it's, I'm perfectly imperfect, right? And so, but really, it's just about, when you want something, whatever you have to do to get it is what you do. I'm providing it's moral and ethical. Of course, we don't want to do anything. We don't want anything we get in prison for or jail. So I don't want jail time. I just want to work. I just want to sling some shakes.
So for those who want to know, what is Project Lean Nation?
Yeah, what is it? So Project Lean Nation, at the heart of Project Lean Nation is we have meals, we have protein balls, we have healthy shakes that we make in store. Shout out to Carrot Cake, number 7, my favorite shake. But what we really are is we're people who help people get to whatever that goal is to have in life. And we center that around the food part of the world because the food part of people's world is really the biggest issue for most people. Being able to find the right foods, being able to get foods that are going to help fuel their body, to help them get results, to help them lose weight, gain weight, feel better. That's what we're all about. And we're about building a community and a culture to do that. Now, is it always going to go right? No, we had a situation today where a customer called me and said, "Listen, man, you guys didn't do a very good job." And you know what? We didn't. So we had to own up to that. And so that's part of is it Jocko Willink? What's the book he wrote? Extreme Ownership. I could have come up with all kinds of valid excuses, but what I had to do is say, hey, I own this. This experience was a result of me and my actions. And if you really trace everything back in that specific circumstance, it really does go back to me. And so, but I could have explained it away easily, but that's part of ownership. That's part of building something long term. That's part of building a community. It's taking ownership for the bad things, fixing them, and then moving on to the next thing. And so, but that's life. You're not everyone's going to love you. Not everyone's always going to be your friend. But do the right thing. Always do the right thing. And if you do the right thing, good things will happen, and eventually that will pay off for you down the road.
Talk to me more about the meals that Project Lean Nation
Mm-hmm.
has.
Yeah.
What are some of the benefits, some of the differences from other meal prep companies?
Right. Yeah, sure. And so Project Lean Nation, we realized there was an inherent problem with the meal prep industry as a whole. And that problem was people would order meals, and a lot of times this is going to be ordering from somewhere that they got the meals online. They got to their home. They were refrigerated. And so they got 5 meals for the week. And they had work issues rise up, and so they weren't able to eat at home 2 of those days. And so they have 2 meals that are expired and they had to throw away. And so that's not very convenient at all. That's and it's supposed to be cost effective and convenient. It was neither of those things. And so what we've done is we have a process where we're actually prepare the meal, it's cooled down, vacuum sealed, and then flash frozen. So that means you pull it out when you want it. And so it truly is about that convenience of things. And also it maintains the food integrity longer because whenever a food is left in a refrigerated state, it's losing nutritional value, right? And so we put it back in that frozen state. So it's locking in that freshness. It's locking in that flavor right then. And so that's one of the biggest things that you'll see different from us. And also the food, we have 24 different meals at any given time. They're all gluten-free, which is important to a lot of people. Our protein balls are amazing. They're gluten-free as well. And so we have meals that are grain-free, dairy-free, but we have meals that really fit most everyone's diet. We have some vegan options. We have some breakfast options. And so we really try to make sure that we can help anyone. And we really try to look at more allergens, not so much as a specific diet, because specific diets ultimately fail. Anytime you tell yourself, I cannot have this for an extended period of time, most everyone will always fail in that endeavor. And so what we do is we say, hey, bring us alongside of you. Let us give you the proper balance of proteins, fat, and carbs, and let's put that in your body. And let's help you look at what you need caloric wise. And then we kind of walk you through the whole process. And so that's why we love what we do, because yes, it's about the meals. The meals are great. They taste great. But the other thing is it's about giving you some knowledge, some information that's going to help you make the right choices. Today was a big pickup day for us at Project Lean Nation on Saturdays. And pretty much every person that came in, they're like going, we love the meals. Mm-hmm. And so we know that we're already making a difference, a small difference right now, but that difference is going to grow because we have something that we look at as more valuable than just the meals. It's something that's called community. It's called culture, and people want to be a part of that.
I think going off of that, one thing that all of us enjoy so much about Project Lean Nation, and something I've heard you speak about before, is how we get to form meaningful connections with those around us and really help them towards their goals. To be able to make that difference, right now small, but eventually one day that big difference, what does that mean to you?
Right. Well, it means everything to me because I mean, my whole world is about people. For 25 years, what I've done is about people. It's very everything I've done in my life is been very people intensive. It hasn't really been capital intensive. It's been about growing and developing people, growing and developing relationships. Because at the end of the day, that's all you have. I mean, money comes and goes. I mean, I've had lots of money. I've lost lots of money. I've lost everything, and I've had to rebuild a couple of times, but that's okay because you still have people around you that love you and support you regardless of what you've done or not done, and that's the importance of having people around you that really care about you and not about the things that you have, but building a culture and community and connection with people because I sit at this table all the time. I mean, I'm at this table a lot nowadays. And so I love this table, but here's the thing: it's going to be funny a couple of years now when we kind of look back in the stories that this table will tell about the people who came in who were 50, 60, 70 pounds overweight, or they had this issue or that issue, and they got on Project Lean Nation meals, and we helped them, and we kept along with them on that journey. And then all of a sudden you look at them and you see a total different person because of what's happened in their life. And so for us to be able to be a small part of change in people's lives, that's what's important to me. And that's why at 51 years old, I'm sitting here starting a brand new business that I've never done before, a franchise, which is totally new to me. And I'm like sitting here going, this is interesting. But it's one of those things where I get to combine my skill set that I've developed over 25 years with a different system. And there's been some challenges. There's been some things I'm like, I don't like that, but I've been able to figure out how to make it work. And so, but that's been fun. But again, at the end of the day, it's always about the people.
So we touched on this a little bit, but I think you would agree that a lot of the reason you were able to start Project Lead Nation so successfully was that you spent 20 years in the health and wellness field. You had your own businesses. You worked for different businesses. Talk to me about the importance of that. Many people do not understand that everything they do is a stepping stone into
Right.
something better. So it teaches them those valuable skills and lessons that they need to know to be able to do that something better in the future. So talk to me about that.
Right, right. So I'll tell you a quick funny story. I used to be an extreme extrovert. I mean introvert. Sorry, not extrovert. I'm that now, but introvert. I mean like bad. And I remember Kimberly, my wife. She was an extrovert, you know, from birth basically. And so I remember she got a job in high school at a place called Circulation 3, and we sold Dallas Morning News newspapers. So I'm sure you know what a newspaper is,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you've ever seen one, but a newspaper, like an old newspaper that I used to throw in the yard. And so, and we sold subscriptions. And so basically, we went to this office and you were all on the phone and you were basically picking up the phone and just cold calling to sell subscriptions for the newspaper. And Kimberly, you know, it's funny because at the front of the building there was a bell, and every time you got a sale, you'd ring the bell. Well, she gets me the job, and I don't even want to talk to people. And I was so scared to talk to people when the phone rang and someone would answer, I'd hang up. I mean, I can tell you, I hung up on a lot more people than that answered it. And I remember one of the only sale I got. I remember this lady. I think she just had pity on me. But I remember going through she answered, and I actually said, hello, this is Michael, and I'm with the Dallas Morning News, and blah, blah, blah. I did my little spiel. And I was just expecting her to say no. So before she could even answer, I was like, okay, that's okay. And she said, whoa, whoa, I didn't say no. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she goes, no, I want it. I'm like, really? And I'm all excited, and I go up there and I ring the bell. The only time I get to ring the bell. But why do I tell you that story? Because, you know, that was a part of that initial journey to the person I am today. And so, but so many things are, you know, like you said, it's a stepping stone. It's to learn things. And I will tell you this, something I would always tell people is if you're at the same job and you keep going through the same thing over and over again, there's a lesson that you need to learn. And so you're always going to be going around, we call it the mountain, the proverbial mountain, until you figure out the lesson that you're supposed to learn. You're going to continue to walk around that mountain and never get ahead. And so you've got to sit back and say, what am I supposed to learn in this situation? And then you learn that lesson. All of a sudden, it's like magic. It's like all of a sudden you get to that next level or to that next place. And so, um, so many of the jobs that I've had, I mean, I was in construction. So being in construction allowed me to have the understanding and the knowledge to be able to be basically a co-general contractor for this project. And basically save myself about $80,000 in fees, or contractor fees I would have paid elsewise. And so that was growth and things that I learned that I didn't know that then. But now I look back and I look at all the different journeys, all the lessons I've learned. And it all came because of different paths and things I've done in my life that have given me more and more skills. And so I will tell you this, I remember listening to a guy named Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn talked about how do you become more valuable, meaning how do you make more money? Well, you become more valuable. You become someone that is indispensable to somebody. And so if I learn every part of a business, it's hard to get rid of me if that business says, hey, I need to lay off some people. Guess the last person they're laying off is me, because I know every bit of it. And so that's my encouragement to young people is, be very well versed in so many things, because that will help you be more valuable to the people that are around you. And so, the most important and successful people in the world have solved the world's problems. Mm-hmm. It's all about solving problems. If you can solve a problem, you're always going to have a place.
Here's a quote for you. Life's challenges are the weights that make us stronger. When it gets tough, remember, you're not stuck, you're becoming. Embrace the process and watch yourself grow. You're not here to stay the same. Mm-hmm. You're here to get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And so I'll give a quote right back to you. And it's this. I remember whenever it was, oh my gosh, one of the lowest times in my life, I literally lost everything. When I say lost everything, our cars were repoed, bankruptcy, foreclosure. I mean, I literally got a letter that said, we're going to sell your house on the courthouse steps. I mean, as a man, that's about as low as you can get. I mean, you have nowhere to go. And I remember calling a guy that was a mentor of mine, and he had something he always said, and he said that that your current circumstances are not an indicator of your true value. And so I had to look at that. And so that's kind of what that quote is saying. It's all about, yeah, I've had some failures. I've had all these things, but it's not an indicator of the value that I have as a person, because circumstances are temporary. Circumstances can change overnight, and sometimes it takes a while to change those circumstances. But our job is to continue on, is to not quit, is to always move forward. And I remember whenever I first got into the health and wellness industry, I remember sitting in a meeting, and I remember a man on stage, and a big guy, like 6'4", 6'5", just a big guy. He used to be in the NFL. He was actually the president of this company that we were looking at. And I remember sitting there, and he was talking about the opportunity and all the great things that came with it. And I was sitting there thinking this. I'm like, if I'm not going to do this thing, but if I ever did, I'll never quit. And I say that because he made this statement, and it brought me back to basically my freshman, sophomore year in high school. One of the biggest regrets of my life, not the biggest, but a regret of my life, not the biggest by any means, but I remember he said this. He said, you know what? If you quit something the first time, it's hard to quit. I mean, you're doing, let's say it's football, for instance, because that's what it was for me. It's football. And I was good at it. I was a really good athlete. And I remember I know exactly why. I was kickoff return. I got called up to the high school team. I was only a freshman, and they're like going, this guy's amazing. We need to have him out there. Kickoff return. I look up, blinding lights. Ball goes through my hands, through my legs, into the end zone, and the opposing team scores a touchdown. And I was devastated. I mean, this is my night, and this is it. This is everything that my little world was all around, right? It was around this football and Friday Night Lights, because I'm in Texas, right? And the coach wasn't the most loving coach, and basically, he wasn't a very good, anyway, he didn't do the right thing, as I know now, as far as how he handled that situation with me. But at that moment, I thought about quitting, and I thought about quitting, and I thought about quitting. I was like, no, I don't want to quit. No, I don't want to quit. And finally, I did. I quit my freshman year in high school of football, and it was hard. And my sophomore year, I came back because the new coach came back, and I ended up hurting my knee, and I had knee surgery. And I was coming back, and it got hard, so I quit. It was hard. It was hard, but it was easier. And so I remember sitting, now we're fast forwarding from a freshman, sophomore year in high school to a 30-year-old man sitting in a meeting and hearing a guy talking about when you quit something, it's really hard. And then the second time, it's not as hard. And the third time, this is what got me. And the third time, he said, that's who you are. You are a quitter. I was kind of mad. I was like, what do you mean I'm a quitter? And then I started thinking back over times in my life, and I'm like, my God, he's right. I'm a 30-year-old man who's struggling with lots of things, and I have become a quitter. And that was not fun, to really internalize that, but it was true. And that's why whenever I made that decision, when I said, if I ever do this thing, one thing I'll never do is quit. And you know what? We started that business, and that business allowed us to travel the world, did amazing things, made way more money than I was qualified to make, all because a guy said something that called me to the carpet basically on who I had become. But I had to accept that. I had to take ownership of that. And so anyway, I don't even remember the question, but there's a long-winded answer about regret and about quitting. And if you quit, that's the only way that you lose. That's the only way you lose.
Whenever people do get to that low point, what should they tell themselves? What should be the thought process? How did you get out of it when you were in this position where you were at the lowest point of your life with no money in that
Right.
courtroom? What did you do?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing you have to do is get out of your own head, because your own head is the worst place you can be, because your own head is always going to be negative in that circumstance, because that's where you are. You're in a negative place. And so anything that you come up with is going to be negative. You got to get out of your own head and get some wise counsel, people around you that speak life into you, because you're only going to grow if you have life coming in. If you have nothing but death going out, that's what you're going to produce, right? And so for me, it was about getting around and growing and becoming more, and realizing that circumstance did not define me. And that's what that quote I said was, my current circumstances were not an indicator of who I was. It was an indicator of some things, some bad decisions. It was an indicator of some bad decisions, lack of understanding of some key principles. There was issues and a lack of ownership on my part. And so but as a man or woman, whatever, you have to own those things. Until you own the problem, you're never going to be able to rise above it. And so I owned the problem, but then I did some things to get out of it. And that was growing and getting around other people and getting myself into positive environments. Because when you're going through that, you don't want to be around positive. You're just like, hey, leave me alone. Just leave me. I want to be in my room. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to do anything. That's the worst place you can be. You need to get out and do some stuff. And I'll tell you, one of the easiest way to get yourself out of that is you go help people. You go help people, and guess what? All of a sudden, the fastest way to get rid of depression is helping somebody else. And then you help them, and you help them, and then all of a sudden you look back and you're like going, oh my gosh, yeah. I feel amazing. Because it all goes back to, what did you ask? It's about people. It's about connecting with people. Me helping people keeps me in a state of positive well-being where I enjoy. And that's what I help people for, not for that, but just because it makes me feel good myself.
You and your wife have been in the health and wellness space for a long time now. Why health and wellness?
You only have one body. What are you going to do without it? So, I mean, it's important that you keep it tuned up, you keep it in good shape, because if you don't, you see people who are 50, 60 years old who look a lot older. Maybe they have a lot of money, but they can't enjoy it. And so to me, health and wellness is just simply about having a quality of life. It's about enjoying life. It's about being able to do things that you enjoy. And if you're in poor health, it's hard to do that. And so health and wellness to us was the first priority, because I'm already an active person anyway, but I wanted to do things that made a difference. And there's so much opportunity in that place in health and wellness, because a lot of times people just don't know how to start the journey. And so to be able to, what I talked about earlier about solving problems, if I can solve someone's health journey with them and walk them down that path, then it's going to be able to produce great things for them and for me. And so health and wellness for me was simply out of, and number one, I wanted to enjoy life. I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to help other people. And in that specific industry I was in, it allowed me to be able to not only help people, but to be able to earn a great income as well. And so that's why for us.
I think you'll agree that the way the world and humans are, every time something is good for you, it tends to be the harder thing to do. And people understand that you only have one body and they want to be healthy. They want to follow their diet. They want to stick to their workout, but they just can't.
Right.
What advice would you give to those people that want to be healthier, but cannot find it within themselves to do that?
Right. Accountability, not only to yourself, but having someone who helps you, because at the end of the day, like I said, you're your own worst enemy most of the time. And so if you've got someone who comes alongside you, just like at Project Lean Nation, that's what we do. That's part of our story, our vision, our mission is to help people with accountability, because most people can't do it on their own. There's a certain population, which is a very small part of the population, that can do it on their own. That they're just that disciplined, that talented, that they're going to be able to do a lot of things on their own. But for the vast majority of people, they can't. Regardless if it's knowledge, if it's education, if it's discipline, whatever the case may be. But how do you help them? How do you change and make it real for them? You hold them accountable.
I think another thing is being consistent in what you do. I heard this quote in a podcast. Being consistent does not mean that you'll be guaranteeing that success, but being inconsistent guarantees that you will not be successful in what you do. What is consistency to you, and how do you ensure that you are consistent in your endeavors?
Right. So, consistency, I mean, it's with the small things, it's with the big things, it's with everything. And so just like, I mean, I have a shake right here, and that's one of the things that we talk about, right? Is consistency of the shake. It should be the same in Frisco, Texas, as it is in Prosper, Texas, as it is in Rochester, New York. This shake should be the exact same everywhere you go. What is that about? That's about consistency. Why? Because that's what people depend on. So the world goes around because of consistency. If it wasn't for that, think about, anything in life. I mean, the train schedule, it doesn't show up on time. It's not consistent. So guess what? You're not going to use something that's not consistent. So we have to become consistent in our life if we want a consistency to see results. So working out, for instance. If you go, let's say that you go work out 10 times over the next 10 days, and then you don't go for 3 weeks. Man, I worked out 10 times in a row, man. I was doing amazing. Yeah, but we missed 3 weeks. So are you going to have results at the end of that 3 weeks? Maybe some lingering results, but not many. Why? Because you weren't consistent. So I'd rather see someone go 3 days a week consistently than to go every day for 2 or 3 weeks and then to stop. And so but that's everything in life. That's everything in your world. If you're someone who shows up consistently, people will depend on you. I mean, I remember times in my former business that, people never asked me if I was going to be somewhere like a big event. They never had to ask me because I had a track record that showed I show up. I'm always going to show up. And so a lot of times that's really all you have to do. And I've talked about that earlier, is just showing up. A lot of times is more than most people will do. And so if you just show up and you add some value, the sky's the limit on what you can have.
There's a quote that you told me about when I first met you by Matthew McConaughey that really motivates me to do better and to always have something to chase. You see, every day, every week, every year of my life, my hero is always 10 years away. I'm never going to be my hero. I'll never attain that. And that was just him explaining that his hero was always himself in 10 years. So he has that something to chase towards. How do you interpret that?
Right. Yeah. Well, for me, I think so many people, when they look at their life and when especially when you're at that point where maybe you have a job and you're starting to seeing some growth and you're really starting to get some accolades, some success. I know for me, that's what happened. I started having success in business. And I was chasing after the next level or this amount of money. And we all realize when you get to that level, when you get to that amount of income, that it's kind of hollow. It's like, okay, well, what's next? And so because those things are empty, those things are, they're nice, they're fun, material things are fun, having nice cars, all that stuff is great. But at the end of the day, it's not going to sustain you over time if you really are wanting to get to that next level. And so for me, it's about reaching after my potential. It's about God gave me He gave me a really unlimited potential. And I know it's kind of corny, but what my gift back to Him was what I do with what He gave me. And so that's about our potential. So when I stopped chasing after the things and the money and everything else, and I really started trying to every day make myself better and grow into my potential, because that's one thing that you'll never reach. Your potential it's way out there. You're never going to truly reach your ultimate potential. You're going to die. But my job is to grow as much as I possibly can, is to really try to go after my potential each and every day. And if I do that, I'm always going to fall a little bit short. And so what does that do? I get to wake up the next day and I have something to look forward to. And so that's what he's talking about. I have something to look forward to because I'm not searching after the thing. I'm searching after a better version of Michael. And I'm searching after a better version of Michael the next day. And that's what it's all about. It's about never being okay with your version of the day before, because your version of the day before isn't ready for tomorrow's challenges.
Here is one by Alex Hormozy, and it's one of my favorite quotes by far. You don't get confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but rather by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self-doubt.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so, I mean, I think, there is a place for, what are they going to call it? Self-help or whatever, where you're speaking things into existence. I get that. But you can speak it all you want, but if you don't have the, if you're not growing your skill set, I'm going to be a billionaire. Well, okay. Well, what am I doing to do that? I mean, what are the steps I'm taking? There's got to be a process. There's got to be a way that I'm going towards that. I can speak it all day long, but until I actually put forth the effort and have some confidence and have some growth and have some abilities, I'm not going to reach that. It's just a pipe dream. And so I think that's what you have to look at is, the things that you want to do in life, the things that you want to have in life, you have to deconstruct from what it takes to get it all the way back to where you are. And then you have to build a plan up to that. And how do you do that? Well, you seek out people who've achieved what you want in life. And so I can tell you, most people who are successful and who are successful and selfless, they are going to be more than willing to help out. And more, hey, this is what I did. This is how I achieved success. They're going to let you know because they understand that there's plenty of room for everybody. We don't have to have a poverty mindset. I don't have to have, oh, well, you sold my customer, you did that. No, I don't care. I mean, there's thousands of people out here. They're going to be attracted to who I am because of to us because of who I am, because who we are. And so if we just understand that, then guess what? We're going to have all the business we can handle. And that's in general, not just here.
Switching tracks for a bit, let's go back to business. What advice would you give someone who wants to start his or her own business?
Talk with people who have already been down that road in business. I have people around me who are wanting to start this business or that business, and they don't have a clue of anything about it. Really talk with some people who've already been down that road. Ask them if it's a good business. Just because so many times you see the outward appearance of someone or something or whatever it is, and you're like going, oh, that must be amazing. They must make all this money. Well, you don't know the backside. You don't know what they really go through because they're not going to project that, are they? Of course they're not. And so what they're having to do, what I'm doing as someone who's looking at a business, number one, is it something I enjoy? Is it something I would do? Project Lean Nation goes along with what I've done for 25 years. So I have expertise in this field. What you don't want to do is start a business that you have zero expertise in. Why would you do that? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And if you want to go down that road, learn about it first. But my deal would be make sure it's something that you would enjoy doing yourself. Always make sure you have an exit strategy. For me, I have an exit strategy for this, and so what am I going to do? I mean, I can tell you what I'm going to do, but all this is I've got to do all this work in order to be able to get to the point where I can have an exit strategy. So, but for those people who are looking to start a business, what do you enjoy? Do you really have do you have anyone that you can learn from in that business, and do you really know what it means in that business? Talk to people who've been in that business for 2 or 3 years. Go talk to some people who've been there for 10 or 15 years. See what the differences are. See what makes sense. See what that person has been in it 15 years, what they have to say, because that's going to be really where you're going to get the wisdom, is from people who've already been there and done it.
Here's another quote. A reminder for the gladiators in the arena who feel beat up and scarred with no hope in sight. Building a business is hard. This is what hard feels like, and this is why most people can't do it. But you can.
Yeah. And so, well, I always want to give you a quote for your quote. I don't know what that
Let's do
is,
that.
but I can't remember the guy's name, but basically he talks about the man in the arena, right? I can't remember the whoever, Teddy Roosevelt, I think. So the man in the arena, he talks about the person who is willing to go out there and get bloody, just like the gladiators, and get bloody. They're going to do all this stuff because they're searching after a dream. They're searching after something, and so you've got to do those things in order to be able to have any measure of success. You're going to get beat up. I mean, you're going to have struggles. I mean, heck. I mean, there's a few things that are guaranteed in life. Struggle is one of them. You're either in a struggle, you're either coming out of a struggle, in a struggle, or going into the struggle. You're doing one of those things. There is no, unless you're dead, of course, I guess. But you're going to be in one of those three areas every time in your life. It's a matter of how you're going to respond to those things. What are you going to do to get yourself out of those things? Because you're always going to be there. And so you have to look and say, what am I willing to learn in all of these things? And so if you learn your lessons, like I talked about earlier, you learn your lessons, you get to move out of that struggle faster. And so how do you want to grow, and how do you want to become more, and how do you want to have more of a life? You learn the lessons faster. How do you learn the lessons faster? You step back and you look at a different perspective. That's how. And perspective is huge. I mean, people ask all the time about the success that Kimberly and I have had, and I owe a whole lot of that to just looking at perspective and stepping back, taking myself out of the situation and taking my feelings out of the situation and say, all right, from their perspective, what are they seeing? And a lot of times I'll look at that and go, you know what, I'm wrong. My perspective is off. And then it allows me to change and get out of the situation I was in because I've owned it. And now I'm moving on to something new. Why? Because I owned it, I looked at it, I realized I was wrong, and then you move on. Because there's nothing wrong with admitting you're wrong.
Specifically for those looking to franchise, what is your overall experience? What is your overall experience owning your own franchise? What would you recommend someone to do who is wanting to start their own franchise in whatever company? It doesn't have to be Project Lean Nation. They want a franchise. What is some advice you would give them?
Right. Well, for me, like I said, it was my first ever endeavor into anything like this. And so for someone who's looking at a franchise, what I'm always going to do is I'm going to look at the ownership of that franchise. I want to know, because essentially they're the leader. I'm following them. I don't have a choice. I mean, they put out what they're going to do, and I got to follow it. If I don't, I probably won't be very successful, because the very nature of a franchise is it's the same everywhere, right? I mean, it's the same. You're going to get the same quality. You're going to get the same everything. And so if you want to do something that you get, I have freedom in a lot of things, but also have things that I have to do based on that franchise and what their branding and what they want to look like. But ownership of the franchise is key. Also, of course, startup. I mean, how much money do you have? So, McDonald's is an expensive franchise to have. So, you know, that's not going to be for a young guy. And so really, it's really looking at the franchise from a standpoint of, what do I want? Am I passionate about it? Can I get behind it? And also looking at and talking with other people in the franchise. Before I bought this franchise, I talked to 3 or 4 other people who owned them, and I got the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there was some of all that. But then I had to weigh the good, bad, and the ugly and say, all right, let me weigh that. Is this growing pains on their part just because they're a young company, or is this a pattern? Is this an issue with ownership? And I learned, obviously I'm here, so that means that obviously it passed for me, and it did. But again, do you love it? Do you want to do it? Do you like the ownership? Is it someone that you would follow? Because you're tied to those people for a while. And so you just have to understand what is it, and the good part of it's, man, it's already done. I don't, before in my old world, I had to create everything, all the systems. I had to create it myself, and that stunk a lot because I was like, I'm not that great at a lot of things, and so I'm having to learn and do things I didn't want to do. And all this is already together. I mean, the shake bar is this high and it goes this long, and here's the POS system. We've already done it for you, and okay, this is cool. So it's almost like a plug and play.
I think the biggest thing is also the service delivery. All the meals are already made for you.
Right.
You're just the middle person connecting PLN and the Frisco community.
Right.
But you don't actually have to make the meals yourself, because if that was part of the responsibility,
I would not be here.
Exactly.
No way. Because that's a lot of work. It's already a lot of work when I'm doing, but if you add that, heck no. That's a big old zero for Michael.
Giving some advice to the younger generation of the audience. I know we gave them some specific advice, but just in general, to be successful, what does it take for the time by when they're older? What do they have to do right now to be able to reach that success that they want to reach?
Right. I mean, I think you're going to recognize a theme here, and it really goes back to, what are the things you have to do as a young man to be successful and to grow? It's, again, showing up. Whenever I had a demolition company back in the day, I remember when I'd go out and I'd bid a job, I'd ask the customer after the job, hey, why did you choose us? And they're like, well, you're the only people who showed up. I called these other 3 people and no one even returned my call. So I had nothing to do with other than I needed it done. You're the only one who came out. And so just showing up is critical. I think for a young man, learning how to deal with people, understanding how to deal with people, understanding that every situation is different, being able to improvise, being able to be adaptable. Those are all strong traits that you have to have if you really want to see success. Being always willing to grow. If you're not growing, you're going backwards. There is no middle ground on that. There is no staying the same. And so if you're gonna grow in whatever that endeavor is that you want to grow in, you put everything you have into that. So growth, being adaptable, being willing to change, being willing to go the extra mile, because the going the extra mile and again, being great with people is a skill set that will always pay off in any situation. And so I remember early on, I always remembered, one of the things that made us successful was it doesn't matter who was sitting in front of me. I can speak to anyone about anything, just because I was willing to learn so many things in my life, because I wanted to make sure that I was actually someone who had enough insight to be able to have a conversation with people. So again, skill set of being around people and being able to work with people is something that will always pay off.
How do you get better at that, dealing with people? How do you get better at it?
Yeah. I mean, how you get better at it is just having conversations with people, having hard conversations sometimes, because that's not fun.
Yeah. What if you're a bit introverted?
Yeah.
Like you were.
Here's the thing. Mine was strictly about dollars and cents. I was working 2 jobs. I was broke. I had 1 car that didn't have AC in Texas summers. and I didn't want to talk to people. But I had an opportunity in front of me that was all about talking to people, and so I had two choices. I can either be broke and miserable, or I can get out of my comfort zone and be scared to death to talk to people, and get out of it and maybe have a chance at something more. And the very, very quick story, I remember my first time I did a cold market sales was in Golf USA. It was a buddy of mine now named Sean. I remember I had an old gray backpack on my arm, and I was trying to sample him this product I was selling, and I was scared to death. And I was walking around that store no less than 45 minutes, and they're like, "Can we help you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just looking." I mean, I was petrified to say anything. And I was sweating. I mean, my armpits were all sweaty. My hand was all sweaty. I was like, I've been here for 45 minutes. And at that point, I was like, okay, if you don't say something, I mean, you're just going to look like a total idiot, which I already did. But finally, I was like, hey, guys, my voice all cracking and everything, because I'm 28 years old and I'd never done anything like this before. And so I was like, hey, I wanted you guys to try this stuff. And both of them tried it. One of them, didn't respond back. And then the other guy actually said, hey, I liked it. And my wife and I really liked it. We want to sit down and talk with you. And so that was my first ever cold call. But I'm telling you, it was no less than 45 minutes. But I made myself do it. So how do you do it? I mean, I was an introvert, but I was like, I don't have a choice. If I want something to change in my life, I have got to change. And so for someone who wants to get better with people, there's books that you can read to get better with people. I mean, there's
one is How to Win Friends and
Influence
People.
Yep. I read that probably 7 or 8 times over the years, and so that that is a good one. There's great books like that you can read. But really, people are simple. I mean, what's the most important thing to anyone? It's talking about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sit here every day at this table, and you've probably heard me.
Yeah.
How much time do I talk about caloric intake? Not a whole lot. What am I talking about?
The other person.
I'm not talking. Usually I'm letting them talk.
Yeah.
And I'm letting them tell me about their journey. I'm letting them tell me about all their stuff. And all I'm doing, positioning us, Project Lean Nation, as a solution to the problem that they are showing me. That's all we do, is we provide solutions to people's problems. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And so how do you become better? And how do you get better at talking with people? You let them talk about themselves, and it's a natural conversation. And that was the important part, is it's a natural conversation. It's not a forced conversation. It's about asking them how they are. How are your kids? I mean, it's not hard to gather information about someone for them to be able to share it with you. And every time that they leave, they're going to say, man, I really like that Ion. Why? Because they felt good about themselves. Why? Because they got to talk about themselves. That's how you talk to people. It really is that simple.
Here's another quote by Alex Hormozi. The game isn't about not losing, it's about not quitting when you do. Mm-hmm. And you talked about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quitting is the only way that you truly lose in life. That's it. That's the only way. And I remember I wrote this down for a reason, the word believe, on my cup here. And why did I do that? Because you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that there is a better way. You have to believe of whatever it is that you're looking for. But I remember whenever I wanted to quit, I didn't see any way out of the situation I was in. There were a few people in my life that spoke belief and spoke things into my life that I started believing. Because unfortunately, a lot of times when you're in that negative place, what you're believing is that bogus story, is what I'll call it. That story that you believe about yourself because it was spoken over you. And so, because whether as a kid, your parents were saying that you're not good at this, and guess what? You grew up and guess what? You weren't good at those things. Why? Because you internalized and you accepted those things. Is it true that you're not good at that? No, it's not. It's you accepted something that was a lie. And so our job is to, how do we uncover all that? Well, when you start growing, you start seeing things, and all of a sudden you start realizing, oh, I'm actually pretty good at that. And that's so funny. So many times I see breakout in people in their business and everything else. It's whenever they stop believing the lie that they were told. And they realize that they had a lot of talents in something that they were told their whole life that they weren't good at.
What are the top five books that you'd recommend someone to read to learn more about business, being successful, dealing
Hmm.
with people,
Yeah.
self-improvement in general?
I mean, there's Jocko Willink. I like his book, Extreme Ownership, because that really talks about obviously extreme ownership. And just like the situation we talked about earlier, um, at the end of the day, how I could have solved that whole situation from today, I got an email at 8 o'clock last night. And if I would have taken that email and did what that email was about,
Mhm.
and had it here this morning, there would not, no one would ever known anything about that whole situation. So it all goes back to who? Me.
Mhm.
And so, but I have to understand that. I have to internalize that. And so, Extreme Ownership is a great book to help you understand that it truly is about you owning everything, whether it goes wrong or good in your life, you still have to own it. And so, that's a great book. Another book, and we talk about working with people, is Everyone Communicates, or Everyone. It's a John Maxwell book. Everyone communicates. Everyone communicates. Few connect, and it's about connecting with people. He also has another great book, 21 Irrefutable Laws. And one of my favorite laws is the law of the lid. The law of the lid simply says, if I own this business and I have a lid on my cup, on my brain, people that work for me can't get above my lid because they keep bumping up to me. Because what am I doing? I'm giving my thoughts and my ideas with this lid on. But if I want to grow and I want to become more, I have to open up the lid so I can pour some stuff in, right? And so for me, the law of the lid is something I've always got to be aware of, because if I've got people that are in my care and they're not able to grow because I'm not willing to grow, that's not, you're not a leader. I mean, you're basically a dictator. And so, um, so that's another book. Again, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a very basic book. I mean, that's kind of like the building stones to everything. Um, of course, for me, I mean, it's my personal belief. It's the Bible as well, because I think all those books came from the Bible anyway. I don't think John Maxwell or any of these guys had like an original thought. It all came from the original book. And those are, I guess, four books. I mean, there's many others. I mean, I've read. I'll tell you this: I have 3 weeks of college education. Now, I'm not advocating that don't go to college. I'm not saying that. Go to college. That's great. But for me, I bought my first rental property. I was 17. I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do in life, and I had some circumstances where I couldn't continue going. But anyway, all that being said, I have a college education in books I've read. I have a college education in analyzing and learning about people. And so I have, and now as I'm older, I learn things because I really want to learn them, not because they're forced on me. And I'm not saying college is forced on you, but you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's just,
Yeah.
it's a learning because I want to learn about a specific something. And so for me, my education was the books I read. And so the books I read allowed me to learn things and understand things and go places that I wouldn't have gone otherwise.
So with this podcast, I actually have a newsletter, and the topic of this week's newsletter was self-learning
Hmm.
trumps formal education.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
formal
there you go.
education is important,
Hmm.
but there's always a threshold, there's always a limit to how much money you can make
Hmm.
with a college degree, because you'll be in a job, you'll
Hmm.
work up the ranks, you'll make more and more money, but there's
Right.
always that limit there.
Hmm.
With self-education, there is no limit. You
Right.
can teach yourself anything, teach
Hmm.
yourself any skill, and do whatever you want.
Yep.
Talk to me a little bit more about that topic of, yeah, college is important,
Hmm.
but you also have to teach yourself a lot of the different things that you have to know about business, about the world, about
Hmm.
dealing with people.
Hmm.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and like I said, again, I'm not down on college, but what I have discovered is technical and formal things only, like you said, take you so far. And then it's the intangible things that take you the rest of the way, such as, and then you can have two engineers, both of them extremely smart, one of them that's great with people and one that's not. I can show you the one that's going to have a huge, massive company and the other one that's going to work for him. Why? because this guy understands that the engineering is about 10% of what he's really doing, because the engineering it's just numbers. It's a big deal, but it's not what's going to take you to that next level. And so dealing with people, being able to understand that it is about you learning and becoming more, is just a massive part of your success in anything in life, regardless of what it is. And that's another thing. Success isn't just money, though. I mean, I think too many people, they're just looking at, oh, well, I got to make if I don't make this much money, I'm not really successful. That's not true. You can have success in many things in life. Money ultimately ends up becoming the smallest thing. And I'll tell you, whenever, writing your goals down, I know some people kind of laugh about that sometimes, and, oh, well, I mean, yeah, whatever. But I will tell you that I wrote down in the darkest time, during that time that we talked about when I lost everything, 2004. I remember my mom gave me a book. It was called The Magic of Goals. And it was a book, and it had an accompanying workbook. And the guy that wrote the book, his name was Ron Reynolds. And he wrote the book, and he said, write down 100 things that you want in your life and 100 things that you don't want in your life. And I remember writing those things down. And I mean, I filled the whole thing up. I wrote down 100 of each because I mean, I had nothing else to do. I was desperate. I'd lost everything. So, wasn't a lot going on good in my life. And so, but it's funny because I had lost that book for years. And we found it in 2015. So 11 years had gone by. And whenever we found that book, and again, I was writing down things that I didn't even think about. I mean, I had no business writing down some of these things. And my assistant found it, and she's like, oh my gosh, Michael, because we were actually fixing to go to Ireland, staying in Dromelin Castle. And one of the things I had written down in 2004 was, guess what? Going to Ireland and staying in a castle. And I was like, oh my gosh, you got to, I mean, literally, we have our tickets in hand, and we're like going, you got to be kidding me. And as we start going across the list, one of the things, and I don't even remember thinking this, was a 5-bedroom house on acreage with a pond. And I'm sitting on my upstairs balcony. There's a lot bigger house than that, but regardless, acreage and a pond. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, wow, 84 of the 100 things were checked off.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so it all became why? Because I was in a horrible place when I wrote all that down. But I believed that at some point it would happen. And so, but I put the work in. We put the work in. And I remembered, and I never forgot that downtime, though. That's the thing that I think has been critical about mine and Kimberly's success. We never have forgotten where we came from. I didn't forget how miserable I felt. A total failure as a man, as a husband, as a father, when I lost everything. But what I realized was I could grow past all that. And here's the funny thing about goals. Further you get down the road, and when you really realize that money's important. You want to pay your bills. I get it. I mean, you want money. No one wants to be broke, right? But I remember whenever I started looking at my goals, when all my goals started becoming about other people and not about things, is when I really became a true leader. Because when you're really wanting things, it's usually because it's a selfish thing, right? It's, I want to have this to show this. I got this. I mean, I got this big house and this big car and all that great stuff. But at the end of the day, again, those things are fleeting. Those things are going to be here today, gone tomorrow. But what you have and your true investment is in people.
I think that goes to say that like the impact you have is more important than the money you're making, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's something that I completely agree with.
Mm-hmm.
When you
have you not agreed with the rest of the stuff?
No, I do agree with the
I'm
rest
kidding.
of the stuff. When you feel stuck, trapped, when you feel like there's no point in doing a specific something because you never see results, what should you tell yourself? How should you find it within you to overcome those things and work as hard as you possibly can, even if you aren't seeing the results?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, most of the time you don't see results in anything right away. And so I think it's about expectation. It's about setting proper expectation for the results that you're wanting to see. For instance, I played golf along growing up, and I played golf as an adult. And I'd get mad and I'd break clubs. What did that help? It helped nothing. I finally got to the understanding of if I'm not going to practice, if I'm not going to put the extra work in, I'm not going to get any better. So why get mad over something that's not going to improve because I haven't done the work to get better? And so for me, it all goes back to what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish? And it's always going to be hard. I mean, heck, it's life. Of course, it's going to be hard. I mean, did anyone guarantee you that it's going to be easy? I mean, who sent that memo out? I mean, it's not. It's hard. Life's hard. Life's not fair. But how you respond to it and and the decisions that you make every day, you get up and say, "Hey, I'm going to be a better person than I was yesterday," and you help other people. And how do you get out of a rut? Well, it's simple. You ask for help. You can't get out on your own. I mean, you can help yourself get out on your own, but it's like I remember this corny story as I'll get out, but I remember there was a guy walking through the woods and he fell in the hole. And so he fell in the hole, and then another guy walking through the woods, he fell in the hole, and they're all like, "Well, how'd you get here? And how'd you get here?" And then someone finally just gave him a stick and they got him out of the hole. Well, I mean, that's what it's all about. You have to have someone that's going to help you. And what's the old story that people didn't get on top by themselves? I mean, there's plenty of people that were a part of that journey. And so, but you can't be too, what's the word I'm looking for? Prideful that you're not going to ask for help. And because, I don't know everything. I mean, I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers. I'm going to get people around me that do. So I don't have to. Why do I want to have to reinvent the wheel? Why do I want to have to do something over and over again? Because I'm too stubborn to ask for help? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So for a young entrepreneur, ask for help. Ask for, what did you do?
Find a mentor.
Yeah. And if you can be someone, and if you can help them, great. And if maybe you see the system, but you're that bright that you can create a better system. Like for right now, I mean, here we are at Project Lean Nation. I mean, we got our freezer back there, which is, half the time not fun. Yeah. And what am I? I'm over here trying to create a better system. Why? Because I don't want to struggle with it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to struggle with it. Now it's going to take me a couple of weeks to figure it out, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to have a system that makes it easy for us. And so that's what it's all about. It's about finding a problem, which that wasn't hard to find. It was a problem from day one. And then finding a solution for that problem.
And using a system to do it.
And using a system to do it. And then after I find that solution, guess what? I'm opening up at Soren Coppell. From day one, I'm not going to have that problem. Why? Because I've already solved the problem. And then if I have a really good solution, I'm going to tell other stores that, and then all of a sudden we're all solving problems. So why do people get paid a lot of money? Because they solve problems.
So you own 2 cabins that you have as a business in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. You told me a lot about your entrepreneurship endeavors, and I was really inspired by that, as not only do you have your main business here, but you also have incomes on the side. Mm-hmm. How important is it to have multiple streams of income? How important is it to try multiple different things? Even though this project took so much time, you're still taking the time out to have something else. Right. How important is that?
Yeah. Well, if you ask anyone who has true wealth, it's going to be, it didn't come from one. Maybe it came from one thing, but then they diversified into many other things. And so ask anyone that's made any significant amount of wealth. And so it really, it comes down to in 2019, I lost everything. And most of everything was tied to one thing. Now, luckily I had saved some money, and we did have already some stuff in Broken Bow because we already had it. But it's vitally important. I mean, if you don't have, and I'm going to call it passive income coming in, and that's a huge, huge part of being able to really create wealth, is to have passive income that does not require my effort and time all the time. Anything that requires only my effort can be taken away just like that. If something happens to me right now for this store, it's probably done because right now I am the store. And so, but I've got to create systems in place and people again and pour into those people so this store can run without me. So that's my goal of any business I have is can I get that business? And so when you talked about people that want to, young people that want to get a franchise, get a business, what is something that you can get that you can work yourself out of a job? If I can work myself out of a job and make money from that endeavor, that's a great thing. And so that's what the cabin business is. Whenever I looked at this business, what are a couple of things that people have to exist? Shelter? What's the other thing?
Food, water.
Food. Look around. We have food. Why did I look at this business? Because it's food and it's cheaper than going to about any place around here to get food. So if we have hard times, guess what's going to succeed? Project Lean Nation. Why? Because it's the necessity of life. And so that's when I look at businesses, I'm always looking at, is it something that someone do it because they have extra money? Or is it something that people do because they have to? And so I have a cabin business that's about luxury. It's about they have extra money, so they're going to go to my cabins. If times get really, really tough, guess what? They're probably not going to be going to my cabins, but where are they going to be going? Right here. And so I have multiple businesses, but they're in different things that if one goes south, the other one's okay. And so it's about looking at everything that you've done, everything that you've created income with, and saying, okay, how is it that I can have this one going well and this one may not? And then just bouncing. And also, how can it be a business that multiple businesses can thrive from? Like we have another business that we have that's more supplement based. Okay, well, do these not go hand in hand? One builds the other. So I have essentially three businesses here. I've got shakes, I've got meals, and then I have another business that I have that kind of goes right along with it. So essentially, you've got three things feeding on one another. The shakes can be standalone from the meals.
Yeah.
The meals can be standalone from the shakes. So I'm not saying I'm that bright, but if you look around, people have to have what we offer. And all we have to do is go out and find the people and get the food in their body. And then the rest happens. And so multiple streams of income in today's world, you'd be hard pressed. If you're going to be successful, you're going to have to do more than one thing, especially if it's one of those things that you don't always want to be working 24/7.
What's next for you as a business owner?
Well, the next step is we're opening up another Project Lean Nation in Coppell, and that's going to be, we'll start construction on that at the end of October. And so we're hoping to have that one open by the mid-January of 2024. We'll get that one up and running January 25. We're trying to open up one in the Rock Lake area in Dallas. And then my plan is in 2025, I'm going to start and build a couple more cabins. And we have 165 acres that I want to develop as well. And so that's kind of my plan that's kind of rolling around in my head right now. But yeah, that's what I want to do. But it's going to take getting the right people in place so I can be free to go do those other things. And that's why, again, when you talked about how did you phrase it? Just about, why I did this. It was about the people. It was not only about the people who were going to come here to get food in the community. It's also about the people that work here, helping develop them and grow them into to better versions of themselves as well.
For audience members listening in the DFW Metroplex who are looking to utilize Project Lean Nation services, what can they do to get started as a PLN member?
Yeah. Well, they can first, one of the good things they can do is they can just come on down to the store and they can meet us because we're amazing, right?
Yep.
But also they can download the Project Lean Nation app that allows them to kind of put in their information. They can see the menu. They can kind of see some of the things that we offer. and they can see how we can make a difference in their life, and ultimately how we can make a difference in their life, but help them achieve the goals that they're looking for. And so, real simple, that's how they can do it. We're in Frisco. We're right here at 8555 FM 423, Suite 102 in Frisco 75036. And we're right in between like Little Elm and the Colony. And we have a lot of people who are already loving and enjoying the products. And so you can go onto our Instagram. I think my daughter Madeline, she's the Instagram, our social media person, which I'm not for sure. But she really does a great job with that. So you can go follow us, and that is Project Lean Nation _Frisco. Yep. And so you can go follow us there, and I think you'll really enjoy. And you'll get to see a snapshot of what the however long Ion and I just talked. A lot of things went back to people. As you scroll through our social media, that's what you're going to realize, that we really are practicing what we preach. It really is about the people. It's about helping people, making a difference in people's lives. And ultimately, I think that's a very worthy endeavor.
Thank you so much, Michael. Your insights were so amazing. I think everyone listening, including myself, definitely took away a couple of things from everything you said. So thank you so much. I really appreciate having you here.
Oh, absolutely, Alan. Thank you so much, and thank you for being a part of Project Lean Nation and such an integral part. And the last thing I'll say to you guys is just believe that whatever it is that's out there for you, that you can achieve it. You're just going to have to work hard for it. You're going to have to do things that sometimes aren't comfortable, but understanding if you keep on going, you keep on believing that you can achieve whatever that is. And just looking forward to much success with all your listeners.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.